I think a lot of people worry, oh, well, if I draft my initial bylaws, I'm going to be super worried that I can't change them or like this is set in stone forever. That's not the case. My name is Dr. Lawson. I'm founder of Hope Counseling Center and the Thriving Impact Program, where I help therapists build nonprofit group practices that are sustainable, ethical, and rooted in community. So today we're going to dive deep into what are your bylaws? What do they actually do? What do they don't do? How to build a board that works, not just legally, but strategically, and how to draw a clear line between your role as a founder and your board or staff responsibilities. So we're going to go over your bylaws, what they actually do, don't do, how to build a board that works, not just legally, but how to strategically build it, and then how to draw a clear line between your role as the founder and your board and any staff that you hire, the differences in those responsibilities. So with that, let's dive into what are bylaws really. So bylaws are your nonprofit's internal operating rules, not to be confused with your operational policies and procedures. What we mean by your nonprofit's internal operating rules is your internal operating rules for the board. Your bylaws do not apply to any operational stuff. That's separate. The bylaws are required by most states. I haven't seen states yet where bylaws are not required. It's definitely required for the 501c3 status with the IRS. Sometimes you need it when you're filing for incorporation, but you absolutely need to have them ready and approved when you apply for your 501c3 status for tax exemption. It is basically a governing agreement between your board and the organization. And it's often things, or when you submit things to the state, you have to provide a copy of your bylaws. What bylaws are not? They're not the same as your articles of incorporation. So your articles of incorporation are filed with the state. They are different. Your articles basically state that you are for charitable purposes, where your bylaws actually outline the guides that your board members are going to follow. And I'm going to go into more depth of what I mean by that in a second. They're not static, so you can and you should update them over time. So I think a lot of people worry, oh, well, if I draft my initial bylaws, I'm going to be super worried that I can't change them or like this is set in stone forever. That's not the case. They are meant to change over time and you should update them annually. They're not just a formality, they're a guide on how power is shared. So let's go into a little bit of like the key sections that belong in your bylaws so you can make sure you have everything that's needed. Your bylaws should be about 6 to 10 pages long. It's a pretty long document, and it absolutely must include a couple of things. Name and purpose, so the legal name of your organization plus a brief mission statement. It needs to include the board composition, so minimum number of directors, that needs to be in the bylaws. Most of the time, nonprofits put a minimum of 3. That's the IRS requirements, but like if this is a large nonprofit, you could put like minimum of 5 or something like that. You also have to include the terms of board. A lot of times the average term is 2 years or 3 years, but you need to include the terms, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. Qualifications for board, you should have separately like a job description. And then you're going to also include the election process. What does that look like when someone's term is up? You're also going to make sure in your bylaws you have officers and roles. So the ones that are required are president, which is also known as the chair. You have to have a secretary, you have to have a treasurer. So if you're going to have a minimum of 3 directors and you're only going to have 3, then those 3 members must hold president, secretary, or treasurer. That's required within the IRS. And then we'll go over what each role does in a little bit. You have to have in your bylaws meetings and how they're conducted. So how often you meet, what counts as quorum. Quorum is like the voting rules for a nonprofit board, usually majority rules, or you need 2/3 or something like that. You need to have like the definition of quorum for your nonprofit bylaws. Bylaws also need to include a conflict of interest policy. This is required for the IRS. If you don't have this in there, you're not going to get approved by the IRS. You need to have info on how conflicts are disclosed and managed. So for example, if you have 2 family members on the board, like how's that managed and how's it disclosed? You'll also have a breakdown of committees. So this is optional, but a lot of times it's helpful. Committees are often board members lead the committees a lot of times, but it's broken down into more tangible tasks that you might need to work towards a certain goal. So let's say you have a major fundraising event coming up. The board, one board person who focuses on fundraising might develop a committee specifically around fundraising, and they meet every week. And then that committee reports to the board, who meets maybe quarterly or twice a year or something like that. You'll also include amendments. So that will include like how do you update and change the bylaws in the future. And then the last thing that you absolutely need is a dissolution clause. So what happens to assets if the organization closes? And for nonprofits, your dissolution clause needs to say that you're going to be donating any assets to another nonprofit. The board does not split up the assets. You don't get any personal gain out of the nonprofit if it closes. You can get paid for being a staff role, so don't misunderstand me. But if the nonprofit is going to go through dissolution, then the assets need to be donated to other nonprofits or one other nonprofit. So that clause needs to be in your bylaws. So how do you typically approve and update your bylaws? Your initial board of directors adopts the bylaws in your first organizational meeting, and then you document that in the meeting minutes. So every time you have a board meeting, you need to have meeting minutes. And then any updates can casually be amended by a board vote. Again, this is usually majority or 2/3, depending on your language. And then the best practice is to review your bylaws annually. And again, don't be afraid to evolve your bylaws as your organization grows. What works for 3 people won't work for 30 people. So it's totally normal to change and amend them over time to meet your organization's needs. So don't feel like your first round of bylaws that's adopted and approved by the board has to be like this perfect document. You're going to learn as you go what makes sense for the nonprofit. Let's go into building your board and understanding board roles. So we'll talk about the actual humans behind your bylaws. So you have your bylaws that govern your board, and then you have your board. The board's purpose is they're legally responsible for governance, oversight, and mission alignment. So it's a high level role, very macro. They're not involved in the day-to-day management. The purpose is to protect the public interest by holding leadership accountable. So if you say you are a charitable organization and you are community driven, essentially the board's job is to ensure that you are carrying out that mission, that you are doing what you say you're going to do. Legally required board roles include the 3 different roles. So the president/chair, the secretary, and the treasurer. So the president is the one that facilitates the meeting, ensures the board actions are actually implemented. They're like holding the board members accountable. The secretary is responsible for keeping accurate minutes and records board decisions. Super important to have that in writing. So that's why you need someone designated to do that part. And then the treasurer oversees the financial reporting and ensures financial policies are followed. These roles are held by different people, and you can add other board roles. Like a lot of times you'll see vice president or vice chair, and then you'll have a member at large. So you might not have other designated titles, but it just might be a board member, a regular member of the board. So those are the 3 roles. And a lot of times, if you're going to be the executive director, you're also not allowed to be, I think it's the treasurer. I always get this mixed up. It's either treasurer or secretary, but you can be the board president and the executive director. And I'll talk about the differences in those roles in a second. So there are some core responsibilities, though, of every board member that you need to know. There's something called the 3 legal duties. These are non-negotiable. I've talked about this in another training, but the 3 duties are duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. This is making informed decisions, attending meetings, reading reports, right? It's duty of care. It's being involved. It's not just a board member on paper, actually caring about the mission. Duty of loyalty is putting the nonprofit's interest above personal gain and disclosing conflicts. So like acting with integrity, right? And then duty of obedience is staying true to the nonprofit's mission and complying with all laws and governing documents. So this is about like maintaining compliance and being transparent in everything regarding the nonprofit. So if your nonprofit, if your board is not clear on these duties, it then opens up you and them and the organization to risk. So part of what I do is teach, and then founders teach to board members and onboard board members like staff, right? So it's important to have job description, training, expectations, a board handbook. All of this stuff I have developed so that it's really, really clear and you know what you need to do in order to train a new board member. So, how do you choose early board members? It can be an informal or formal process, but it's really about people who believe in your mission and can be team players. Best practice is to have skill based. So, people who have skills different than yours, such as financial, legal, clinical, fundraising, operations, all that stuff. If you don't have that right off the bat, that's okay. You'll find it eventually. It is important to avoid stacked boards of just friends and family. Sometimes we are looking at the people in our inner circle because that's all we know right now while we're building the board, and that's okay. But like, you really do want stakeholders in the community that you're serving. One rule of thumb is to use the give, get, and grow model. So what this means in representing like the board is like they give money, they help get money, or they help grow your reputation. So give, get, grow. Here's where a lot of early founders get tangled up. Who actually does what once you're up and running? And especially if you yourself as the founder, if you have a dual role. So board responsibilities, they set and revise the strategic plan. They approve the annual budget. They hire and fire the executive director, or you if you're in that role, which a lot of people are scared of. Again, they have to have reason. They monitor organizational health and mission alignment. So again, macro level stuff. And then sometimes they have fundraising support. Not always, but a lot of board members are often people who want to give to the organization or know how to fundraise themselves. Staff responsibilities, which is often you and people on your team, they are responsible for the day-to-day program delivery, hiring staff, hiring contractors, building programs, doing the contracting with county partners, managing clinical operations, grant writing, marketing, outreach, intern, associate supervision, reporting outcomes, and then reporting outcomes and performance to the board. So, right, like what are the outcomes? How are we performing? And then giving that information to the board. Some common mistakes with this are letting board members help out with staff tasks. You might do this in the beginning before you hire staff, but once you hire staff, like the board members just need to have oversight. They are not involved in the day-to-day decision making. It's really a short-term solution that leads to like long-term confusion and blurred boundaries. So you want to make sure that's pretty clear when you're going over your job description, when you're bringing people onto your board. If your board is scheduling client intakes or like running your social media calendar, then we definitely have a structural problem. And again, they might be volunteering their time in the beginning to get you up and running, but really things like that are staff roles. So this is people who are not involved day to day. They are only involved at the macro level. Their job is to follow the bylaws, carry out the bylaws, and have oversight of the nonprofit with duty to care, duty to obedience. So hopefully that clears up the differences in roles. Bylaws are your blueprint. You're going to keep them flexible and functional. Your board's job is governance, not doing everything, not doing the day-to-day operations. As the executive director and founder, you run the show operationally with accountability to the board. And then clear roles means less burnout and better impact. So having super clear structure, super clear roles, really good boundaries is going to help you to set up the right structure for success. What I do is I provide people with actually done for you bylaws, done for you articles of incorporation. I have a board package that sets up the job description that's tailored to your nonprofit. Right now, my done for you package, it's the nonprofit quick start package that's super popular. A lot of people are loving this. It's really affordable. It's $9.97, but it includes written out bylaws, articles of incorporation with your state. We're actually doing it. We're getting you incorporated, doing the full 1023 application with the IRS, complete board package that outlines not only your bylaws, but job description, tailored to your nonprofit, tailored to your mission, onboarding packet for the board, meeting minute templates, an outline on how to run board meetings so that you don't get stuck in the common mistakes. And then also included in this package is a complete roadmap and business plan that goes into like specifically how do you get up and running operationally. Like I said, it's really popular right now. I really only take on 4 at a time, and I just wrapped up 2, so I have a couple of slots open, and I've been getting great feedback from this because if you're looking to start your nonprofit pretty quick and not have to learn how to do everything yourself, this package is definitely for you.